We're back here on the Greg Peterson Experience on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Great to be joined by a man that most of you guys know best as Fats, as it is Steve Diano. His nickname is Fats, as he has been in the industry for a very long time, a very, very good and professional bettor. And Steve, it is great to have you aboard, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you for having me back. It's a pleasure to be back.
It is great to have you aboard, and I know it's something that you've been doing this year. It's something that you call the CLV Challenge, which that simply stands for closing line value, and I know that you've been taking a look at this for college football. Take the people through a little bit of what you've been doing with this, because I know that this has been more for college football, and what the results have been to this point.
Okay, well, I've started out with the premise. I've been saying that as long as you have closing line value, it doesn't really matter how well you're handicapping the games. Obviously, if you're handicapping the games well, you should end up with closing line value by the time you make your bets and the game's closed. But the bottom line is, even if you're not handicapping the games that well, if you can beat the closing line by at least a point, that should be enough to win. So what I did was I picked every week, I picked 20 games at random with a random number generator that generates 20 teams off the schedule for Saturday. And my theory is that if the number matters 5% of the time, you're going to win with CLV. So I assign a value of 1 point better than the closing line at circa on on the 20 games. So when they kick off, whatever the closing line is at circa, they're assigned 1 point better for the purpose of evaluating whether they won or lost. And the theory was that if only 1 out of 20 were to fall on the number each week, that would be enough to make the difference between winning and losing. So the assumption is you would go 10-10, and if one game fell on the number, that would either make you, if the game landed on the number, then you would go from 10-9-1 to 11-9, or if the game was on a half a point, then you could go from 9-11 to 11-9. You could flip the game. So either way, you'll be either 11. You'll either be 10-9-1 or you'll be 11-9 if one game falls and you went 5-5. So the results so far have been week 1, the actual picks out of a hat went 10-9-1, but we had one game fall directly on the number, and so that made us 11-9. The second week, the picks out of a hat went 9-11, but one game, the line was 12.5. We moved it to 11.5 and won by 12. So that flipped us from 9-11 to 10-10. And then last week was a little bit of an anomaly. The random number generator was on fire last week, and the games went 14-5-1, and the one game that was a tie ended up becoming a winner, making us 15-5. So, the fact that they went 14-5, they could have gone 5-14, but each week, one game, the numbers made the difference. And the difference is right now, instead of being, with the big win, you're 30 without the extra point, you'd be 33-25-2, which is 56.9%. But with the extra point, that increased to 60%. You'd be 36 wins and 24. So that's an extra almost 3 to 4%. And that's the difference between winning and losing. Because if you'd be 50-50 and you pick up 3%, you're now going to be above 52.4%, which is all you need to be a winner. So that's the nutshell of the CLV challenge and how it's going so far.
And I do think that is so interesting, because if you do have, like you said, if you make 40 picks, you go 20-20 on those, that'd be 50%, but you have that one flipperoonie. You're able to just have 2 games that fall on the number. You're able to take those. We're not even going to call them call them losses that turn to wins, but wins that turn to pushes, that takes you from 20-20 to 20-18-2. That all of a sudden takes you from losing a little bit of juice to being in a very, very, very small profit because, as you mentioned, 52.38%. So I do think that is very important to point out. And obviously, this would be on -110 and -110 only. And if you do have the increase in juice, which we are seeing a little bit more, I do think that is something that is very important because I know that you're talking about closing line value when it comes to just the spread in general, when it comes to most notably football. But I think that this is also very important to something that we're going to be seeing a lot of within the next month. We're going to see a lot of people jumping into baseball. The hockey season that is starting up as well. And I do think that closing line value is still really important in these sports as well. And to just the casual bettor, it's like, oh, all you need to do is you need to pick the winner. And as we know, there are some lines that are chalkier than others. We're seeing these -$3 favorites popping up in baseball. But in your opinion, just how big is it to pick up, like, we're going to call it 5 to 10 cents of value with regards to like a baseball/hockey game? Because I still think that even though it's just picking the winning/losing team when it comes to money line, it's just all about long-term value in these, I call them grinder sports. And I still think that it's just so important to be taking a look at these money line sports and just really gauging the number itself because it's pretty much implied probabilities.
Well, those extra pennies you get, what invariably happens is, when, let's say the market price is -$1.20 and you're only getting -$1.15, or maybe you're getting -$1.12. Well, every time you win, that comes out the same, but every time you lose, you're losing 8 cents less. By the same token, if you were betting the dog and you took, instead of taking plus $1.20, which was the market, maybe you got plus a quarter or plus $1.27, you're going to get an extra 5 or 7 cents there every time you win. So each time that money just adds up and adds up and adds up. It'd be like, I think there was an old Superman, one of the Superman movies, where I think Lex Luthor had a program that would take a bank and it would take all the extra, like, fractions of a penny that got rounded out of an account, and it used to stick them all in one account, and he was making millions because those pennies add up. And it's the same. That's the same principle. You're just taking all those extra pennies. They're all going to add up. You might not feel like you see it physically, but they're in your figure and they're in your math or in your bottom line bankroll from day to day.
And I do think that is so important, just being able to take a look at the small little bit of value that you're able to get on those. And also with money line sports as well, I know that's something that you discussed on a little bit of a interview that you had with the first episode of 90 Degrees, is taking a look at being able to middle as well, because, I mean, it's not typical that you find something like this, but you can see a money line where it starts out like -110, -105 both ways in a baseball game. You have a big flipper-rooney to where you now have a big underdog because the steam comes in, and you're able to make money by being able to bet the middle just without the game even being played or having being started in general. You're already finding yourself in a profit, and I do think that this is something that is always unique as well. And then being able to, even if you want to go a little bit further and bet in-game, you're able to find great value in that as well.
Well, the only thing I caution people on those things is that when you play a quote middle, that each side of the middle you bet should be a type of a bet that in and of itself you would bet regardless. So you have to have value on both sides, because if you have value on just one side, like let's say you lay $1.05 and then you take back plus $1.15, but a minus $1.05 is everywhere. You can still do that. Well, the value is in the plus $1.15. There's no value in the -5. Now you have a free scalp and a free shot to make money, but you're really giving money away with the $1.05 side. You'd be better off just being on the plus $1.15 side.
And I do think that. Yep, and when it comes to being able to middle games as well, obviously it's much more popular when it comes to spreads, where you get like a game that starts out at laying -6.5, you're able to get a 7.5 on the other side, so you're getting plus 7.5. You're getting -6.5, game line 7. That's always a popular way to look at that as well, and being able to hit both of those. But something else that we've got to be hitting upon is just ways that many of the professionals get down money, and sometimes it can be a little bit more difficult with what we've been seeing recently. And we're going to be hitting upon that with legendary bettor Steve Diano here on the flip side, here on the Greg Peterson Experience on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. We're back here on the Greg Peterson Experience on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network, and we're being rejoined by legendary bettor Steve Diano. You're able to follow him on Twitter at @real_Fats. And I know that's something that you've been talking about here in recent weeks, and I know that this has been something that you've been talking about for a long time, is what is truly responsible gaming? Because I know that there have been many people trying to put it in many different ways, and there are oftentimes some places that they don't necessarily practice what they preach. Take me through what you think it should mean, and how some places have just not necessarily been living up to that name.
All right. Well, first of all, let me start out with, you see on Twitter all the time, the American Gaming Association, their president Bill Miller, Kate DeBaum, people like that. They constantly talk about how they are promoting responsible gaming and how they donate to responsible gaming and stuff like that. But in actuality, they could care less about it, and they don't do anything about it. This is what they do. If you have a gambling problem, what they've decided they want to do is, you have to recognize your gambling problem yourself, and then you can go into their app and you can set your own limits to be low, and you can set your limit to not, to keep your amount of time on the app, and they call that being responsible gaming, and then they give you a number for 1-800-Gamblers Anonymous. Well, that's ridiculous, because there's nobody is going to recognize that they have a gambling problem, and then the worst thing they could do if they do recognize it is use those tools. I mean, that's like giving an alcoholic a thimble to drink from at a bar. You still don't give the guy alcohol. It's like putting a sign up at a buffet that says, look, your options are eat here or go on a diet. I mean, it's an absolute disgrace the way they do it. Then on top of that, let's take, what is a responsible gambler? A responsible gambler is somebody who can sit there and they can manage their money properly, maybe handicap, and they can bet and possibly win. Well, on top of that, the sports books go around and they target people who they perceive as winners, and they cut their limits to as little as $50 a game on a pro football side, $50 a game on college football side. On the day of the game, 10 minutes before the game, the maximum you can bet is $50 or $100. Well, why are you limiting the responsible? If they're limiting the responsible gamblers, and the ones that are irresponsible, they're making them limit themselves. What are they doing? They're targeting the irresponsible gamblers and just trying to suck every penny dry out of them. It's a disgrace. And then you can look at their commercials. You take the commercials, first of all, I don't know anybody that goes into a bet and thinks they're going to lose. Even if you're the worst handicapper in the world and you lost your last 10 bets, you make your 11th bet, you still think you're going to win. So everybody thinks you're going to win. So they advertise that bet with us, be a winner, bet with the king of sports books. They got Jamie Foxx, bet with the king of sports books like me, and you'll be a big winner. But if you win, they'll cut you down to $50 or $100. They won't let you play. And then they have another commercial where they have Jamie Foxx. He's at a party and he's trying to decide who to bet on, and he's on his phone and he's calling various former pro athletes, trying to get some information so that he can make a responsible bet based on information. But all the people he's calling are too busy to help him out, and he can't get any information. And he gets across the room and he comes across a lady in a beautiful evening dress, and she says, just do what I do. Go with your gut. And Jamie Foxx says, great idea. And then they show him, boom, hitting the button and placing the bet. I mean, that's not, they're not promoting anything responsible at all. It's an absolute disgrace.
And I think the big question that I have from all of that is, because we do have a lot of people that are listening that many of them, they're putting down $10, $20 a game. We're catering to a lot of people that they aren't professionals, and there are certainly professionals that are listening, and I'm sure that they feel the pain that I'm sure that you have felt time and time again. They do get limited quite a bit. There is a lot of people that they want to get down a lot of money on a game, and they're not able to, especially on things like openers where the lines are, we're going to call it what it is, the best that you're going to be able to find them. The longer that you wait, typically, the more it gets sharpened out, the more that you're able to get to the true number. But what do you think would be the best advice that you have for someone that is looking to try to get into it and they don't want to try to fall into some of these pitfalls that we are seeing with regards to some of what we've got in terms of what you were talking about, the responsible gaming not necessarily being so responsible?
Well, if you're, I think if you're saying what should the responsible player do as far as getting to get down or finding a place to
I
play
think what the bigger question I have is, what is your best advice for more of a novice bettor, someone that's just starting to get into it so that way they don't fall into a lot of these pitfalls that you were describing a little bit earlier?
Well, the novice bettor is always going to be the novice bettor, but just be aware that a lot of the stuff that you're doing, you know, they're basically training you that you're doing this for entertainment. And so you're probably not going to win in the long run because they're not structuring anything to help you with that. They're not giving you any tools for that. They're not giving you any proper advice for that. As far as the responsible gamblers that can win, what the American Gaming Association is really doing, because they sent a letter to the Justice Department saying that these sports books or offshore sports books are no good, and they trick people and they do all this stuff. Well, right now they're the only places that really will let you take a bet and treat you like a person. So what the American Gaming Association is really doing is they're driving people back offshore. I mean, everybody in the world and everybody in this country was thrilled that there's going to be gaming, and they can bet sports like in almost every state these days. And now those that have a chance to be a little bit successful, and there's even small players that still get banned just because they're small but they're winning, and they get cut back too. And they're basically driving people to want to go back to the offshore. And what American gaming should be doing, instead of trying to shut down the offshore places would be more than happy to enter the U.S. market and pay the same taxes and follow the same regulations that they have to do and compete in a fair market. But they don't do that. They just badmouth that industry, and they won't even give them a chance or say invite them to come in and participate. So the American Gaming Association is, in my opinion, a scam operation. It's a bunch of propaganda. They're telling you, they're just saying what nobody really knows the difference what they're saying. So people say, oh well, they know what they're talking about. They're not. They're just trying to promote their own agenda for themselves, and it's a disgrace. What I recommend is that the people who are in this position, when they see me tweet about it, they should retweet me. The more we get on social media and get the message out there when these things happen, the better off we'll do. And I also recommend find your local representatives in Congress and tweet them about it constantly and make them aware. And if we put together a social media storm, maybe we can make a dent and get a voice.
Yep, and what I think is so important is making sure that everyone is able to get down the money that they want to on a lot of these games. I know that someplace I sit right now, Circa, has been able to do a great job of that. I know that you've been a great voice for this too as well, Spats. Always do appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and I needed to get that off my chest. So.
Absolutely. And that's very informative right there because it certainly is something that has been going on quite a bit with a lot of players being limited. So we shall see if things do get changed here moving forward. And something else that we've got our host Danny Burke of the VSiN Pro Football Betting Podcast. He comes at you every Monday, Thursday, and Friday. He has given you totals, props, futures for all these NFL games. You're able to find the VSiN Pro Betting Podcast wherever your podcast. And coming up next, going to be taking a look at some baseball here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.